Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaste everyone. Welcome to the series of videos about the Tithis or lunar phases in Vedic astrology. I decided to do this series of videos because honestly there is not that much that you can find about Tithis or lunar phases in Vedic astrology, and that was one thing that actually disappointed me greatly once I started to study and practice Vedic astrology, because that was the first thing that attracted me. So that was the moon itself, and the changing phases of the moon that attracted me towards studying Vedic astrology in the first place. But when it comes to lunar phases, it's a very interesting topic and very mysterious, not that much researched as well. Because when it comes to lunar phases, when it comes to the moon itself, moon actually governs the water element. And Tithis also are governing water element in Vedic astrology or in Panchang. So in Vedic astrology, we are saying that time or the present moment has 5 limbs or 5 qualities. And these qualities come from 5 elements. So for example, weekday or Vara is governing fire element. Nakshatra or the star is governing air element. Karana, which is half of the lunar day, is governing earth element. Yoga, which is the angular relationship between sun and the moon, is governing ether element. While Tithi or lunar phase, which is the topic of today's video, is governing water element. So we all know that the moon, and especially changing phases of the moon, have enormous influence on the water on our planet. So whenever there is a full moon and you go to the sea, you go at the ocean, you will see that water level will rise, in big water bodies. The waves will be higher, bigger and more powerful. And considering the fact that also 65% of our body at least is made of water, obviously the changing of the moon have enormous influence on our body as well. And not only in psychological, on psychological level or on emotional level, but also on the physical level. So for example, there was several studies made on that exact topic, like how phases of the moon at all influence our body. And for example, what is fascinating that when there is a new moon, so where the lunar energy is at its lowest, then for example, people who are experiencing urinary retention problem, their problem will grow even more. So just in short, the more moon is growing, the more moon is full, you will literally pee more. And you will literally need more water as well. What is also fascinating that, for example, during new moon, the level of suicides is much higher, while during full moon, the level of accidents or the number of accidents is much higher as well, or the number of crime even sometimes. So obviously the moon and its changing phases has enormous influence on our entire system, on our body, on our mind, on our emotions, on our spirit even. And this is why it was so greatly surprising to me when I came into the Vedic astrology and I realized wow, there is so little about the Tithis, so little about the lunar phases, and they have such a profound effect on us. And which is why I really decided to dedicate myself a lot to researching the Tithis, to researching all their different qualities through all the different scriptures, not only astrological scriptures, but even the mythological or tantric scriptures. And based on that, I wrote my recent book, which is called Journey with the Moon. You can order it by clicking on the link below. And in this series of videos, what I really will try to do is to kind of give you the feeling what Tithi is at all. What is the lunar phase at all? How exactly does it influence us? Because the influence is just enormous. Not only, psychologically, but astrologically, influence on your own Tithi can be great on your entire life, which is what we are going to cover today. So the word Tithi itself comes from the Sanskrit word Atithi, and Atithi means a guest. I'm sure that all of you, especially those of you from India, know the phrase Atithi Devo Bhava, which means guest is God. And similarly, the Tithi in Vedic astrology is going to reveal us how we are welcoming things into our life. Because moon is receptive, so the phase of the moon is going to show us how we are welcoming emotions that come into our life, people that come into our life, how we are welcoming certain experiences, and what are also our manners and reactions when we are actually meeting those things. So how we are going to react on changing, experiences of the present moment, because moon is the present moment, and moon is also the goddess. So based on that, you can also know, for example, how the person treats another person. Specifically from the Tithi, you can actually see how the person treats the mother, how the person is treating also women. So basically speaking, from the Tithi, we are learning how we are welcoming certain experiences into our life. Each Tithi has entire rainbow of different qualities or different colors or different moods, because when we are talking about the Tithis, virtually what is the Tithi? Is the distance between sun and the moon. Sun is Shiva in Vedic astrology, while moon is Shakti. So sun will be the divine father, while moon is the divine mother. And from relationship between both of them, the divine father and divine mother, divine masculine principle and divine feminine principle, you are born, you are brought into being. So you can imagine that, Divine Mother, on each full moon, she comes very close to the sun, she comes very close to Shiva, she actually unites with him, while during Shukla Paksha, or the bright fortnight, she separates from him. She moves towards the full moon, towards her own fullness, to discover her own individuality, while during full moon, she shines the fullness, of her splendor. While during Krishna Paksha, or the dark fortnight of the moon, the waning moon, she moves back and she comes back to Shiva. So you can imagine that during entire, journey of the moon, on every step that Divine Mother is making, she will have slightly different mood. She will feel differently when she will be close to Shiva, to her beloved, and she will feel differently when she will be away from him. And depends on that also, each of the Tithis have many different qualities, and we are going to discuss these qualities just in short, just to give you any picture of what these qualities are at all. So above all, every Tithi or every lunar phase has its kala. Kala is called a quality, or it's also a particle. Sometimes it's also called a ray of light. Because it is said, that all the kalas of the moon, they actually come from the sun. They come from Shiva. So during bright fortnight, when moon is waxing, one kala or one particle of the sun joins the moon each day. While during dark fortnight, when moon is waning, the kalas of the moon slowly return back to the sun. So these kalas are literally just the certain qualities of the moon, or certain qualities of your own mind and your own emotion. So similarly, like there are 16 kalas of the moon, 15 of them are ascribed to each of the 15 Tithis, while the 16th one is said to be beyond this world and beyond the time. And similarly, there are 16 qualities of an avatar, so 16 qualities of the divine enlightened being, which are also assigned to each respective Tithis. Because lunar phases, or phases of the moon, are literally the phases of our mind, each phase of the moon is also connected to some of the stages of our consciousness. So in Vedic culture we are saying that there are 4 main stages of consciousness. Waking state of consciousness, when we are awake. Dreaming state of consciousness, when we are dreaming about something. Deep sleep state of consciousness, when we are totally in a deep sleep and when we are unaware what is happening around us. And also Turiya state of consciousness, which is enlightened mind. And also within each of these 4 stages of consciousness, we can again split each of them into 4. So there can be waking state of consciousness within waking state of consciousness, dreaming state of consciousness within waking state of consciousness, and so on and so on. So each of these subtle stages of consciousness is also closely associated with each Tithi or lunar phase. Each of the Tithis or lunar phases will be also connected to one of the 5 elements. So 5 elements, or let's say 5 creative principles on which the entire universe is based, are Earth, which is connected to stability or accumulation of something, because it's the most gross and the most stable state of matter, you could say. There is water element, which is connected to fluidity, obviously. There is fire element, which is connected obviously to fire, passion, creativity. There is air element, which is very creative and very much connected to feeling of freedom. And there is also ether element, which is the fastest and the lightest of all elements and is connected to fast exchange of energy. So each of the Tithis or lunar phases is also connected to one of the 3 Gunas. And Gunas are literally modes of nature. And we are saying in Vedic philosophy that nature can manifest itself in one of these 3 Gunas, and they are actually creating or triggering action. So we are having Guna of Rajas, which is about activity and passion, creating something. There is Guna of Tamas, and Tamas literally means darkness, so it's the Guna of chaotic, lethargy, just non-moving, literally, chaos, ignorance. And there we have also Guna of Sattva, which is Guna of purity and pure state of mind. Each of the lunar phases also has its planetary ruler. And the planetary ruler is called the Tithi Lord. And actually the placement of Tithi Lord in a chart is unbelievably important, because the Tithi Lord becomes the one who influences our emotion in the greatest manner. But also Tithi Lord is the planet which is literally carrying our emotion. So the state of the Tithi Lord is very, very important in our birth chart. Each of the Tithis is also connected to one of the directions of the world. And for those of you who know about the Dikpalas or the guardians of the world, you also know that each direction has some specific quality. So we are usually saying in Vedic astrology that when certain Tithi is operating on that exact day, that on this exact day it is dangerous to move in that exact direction ruled by that Tithi, because let's say that the more, less benevolent nature of the planetary ruler of the Tithi is going to be dangerous into that direction. So we will actually not go so much in detail into this topic during this series of videos, but you can read a little bit more about that in my ebook, Journey with the Moon. Each of the Tithis also has its presiding deity, similarly like the nakshatra. However, when it comes to the Tithis and the deities presiding over them, the story becomes a little bit more complicated. Because when it comes to the nakshatra or studying the stars, to whichever scripture you go, be it astrological scripture or Puranas, you will see that always, the same nakshatras are presided by the same deities. However, when you are coming, to learn about the Tithis, you will go to any scripture, literally, you can take Muhurta Chintamani, take Agni Purana, take Narada Samhita, any of the scriptures, and you will see that in every scripture deities are completely different. And why is that so? Because you see, when it comes to Tithis, they really represent our emotions, our internal state. And when it comes to, trying to associate emotion with exact deity, or associating the emotion with exact quality, it becomes a little bit difficult, In a way, we could say that kind of, Vedic sages failed to really interpret the emotion or give exact deity to the emotion. And this is why Tithis were actually given in Tantric tradition not deities but Devis, Nitya Devis, the goddesses of eternity or the guardians of time. They were given a feminine form because Moon in itself is a goddess. Moon is feminine. So Nitya Devis, or the goddesses of eternity, because Nitya means the eternal one, are in Tantric tradition 15 manifestations of goddess Lalita Mahatripura Sundari. So the highest goddess. And this is why also the lunar phases were ascribed to them. And even, in Tantric tradition it is said that there are many forms of the Divine Mother, but none of the forms of the Divine Mother is highest or higher than these Nitya Devis. So this is how high and how revered they are in Tantric tradition. And this is one thing that actually I believe that nobody made even attempt before in Vedic astrology, is to try to connect with them, to try to understand them more, and try to understand, the entire chart from their perspective. Because if, you have some phase of the moon in your own birth chart, you can be sure that the Divine Mother is in exact mood of exact goddess presiding over this lunar phase. And you can be sure that this exact form of the Divine Mother has really a lot to say to you. They are also called sometimes in some tradition Kala Shaktis, so literally the powers of time, or they are even called Atmikas. Atma is the soul, while Atmika is like a small soul. So it's like a soul particle, literally. So in a way we could say that 15 phases of the moon are 15 particles of our own soul. And generally, the entire science of Nitya Devis is really enormous, is very big in the Tantric scriptures. But one particularly fascinating thing which I found out is that, each of these goddesses, they have some number of hands. And this is not equal number of hands. So some of them may have 6 hands, another one may have 10 hands, and another one may have just 2 hands. But if you summarize the total number of hands of all 15 of them, you will actually get 108, which obviously reflects also the 108 padas of the nakshatras, the lunar mansions. So from that knowledge, we can also ascribe certain nakshatras to different tithis and see how they are interacting. So all in all is unbelievably fascinating knowledge, and you have really written it very much in detail in my ebook. But also here in this series of videos, we will attempt to just very shortly analyze the different qualities of different Nitya Devis presiding over different tithis or lunar phases. So one interesting thing is that each of the Nitya Devis also has her yantra. So what is a yantra? Yantra literally means a machine or an instrument in Sanskrit. And yantra is usually a geometric representation of this exact form of the divine. So each Nitya Devi has her yantra, which obviously can become a great remedy for your own tithi or for your own moon in your birth chart. Even if you will just take, a stencil of this yantra and just color it or just meditate with it, or even put a glass of water on it, you can literally heal the water or the emotion within yourself. You can make your mind more peaceful as well. But what is also fascinating about these yantras, that even just by observing them, observing their different shapes, you will very quickly and very accurately realize why the tithis are so different. Because you will see that some shapes will be more sharp, some will be more expansive, some will be more simple. And based on that, also the moon will behave differently. So also those stencils you can also find in my ebook Journey with the Moon. You can print them out for yourself and even use it as the remedy for your own phase of the moon. So whenever there is a yantra, there's also a mantra. So also every Nitya Devi or every phase of the moon has a specific mantra prescribed to it. These mantras you can also find in the ebook, but the very core of each mantra is actually vowel. So in Sanskrit we are saying that there are 16 vowels, and the 16 vowels are actually said to come from the sun, because ultimately the moon always reflects the light of the sun. The moon's actually, this bright side of the moon is always turned towards the sun. Similarly, like the Divine Mother, she's always focused on her eternal beloved. So the 16 vowels of Sanskrit alphabet also become the 16 mantras of the phases of the moon. One other fascinating thing about the tithis is, which was actually found out by Sri Yukteswar Giri, is that every tithi or every lunar phase makes one of our chakras a little bit more active. So depending on the lunar day on which you were born, this chakra might be a little bit more active, or even to say it more accurately, is that more emotions, might be stored there, or you might be a little bit more private about the topics related to the chakra. So this is exactly what chakra, associated with the lunar phase is doing. But also in our daily life, depending on the phase of the moon operating during exact day, you can also very easily notice that it will influence your body in some way, and this will also influence your chakras as well. So one other interesting thing about the Tithis is that they actually affect even our breathing patterns. This was discovered by many ancient yogic traditions that, depending on the phase of the moon and whether it's Krishna Paksha or Shukla Paksha, so waxing or waning moon, our breathing pattern will change. We'll breathe more through left nostril or more through right nostril. So this you have also described very much in detail in the book, but in these videos we won't go so much into that topic, as we will be focused much more on how the Tithis are affecting the person astrologically when the person is actually born on the day of exact lunar phase. So similarly, like there is one form of the Divine Mother or Nitya Devi presiding over each lunar phase, there is also one form of Shiva presiding over each lunar phase. This is actually quite ancient knowledge, and you might not find it in that many scriptures that Shiva actually had originally 16 forms. You will find it more actually in Vastu scriptures, all the scriptures about Shilpa Shastra, so the art of making a sculpture. But even through analyzing the 16 forms of Shiva, you can understand much more about each lunar phase. So this was just in short about lunar phases, about the Tithis, just to give you a taste or a little bigger image of how much you can actually learn from the Tithis or lunar phases. And I can assure you that there is so much more to learn about that. And in the upcoming series of videos, I will try to cover each Tithi just very shortly, just through a couple of keywords, just to give you a taste or the feeling of energy of each lunar phase. So if you want to learn more about the Tithis, you can purchase my ebook, Journey with the Moon. You can also join me on my Patreon community, where we are having bi-monthly webinars. So twice a month we are meeting on a webinar together just to discover all the Tithis more in depth and to research this topic much more, because there's still so much more to discover. And also very soon there's upcoming course with Cosmic Insights, which is going to be 4-week-long, very intense course just on the topic of lunar phases. So thank you so much for your attention, and see you next time.